In the bone-shattering cold of Yakutia, where breath turns to ice instantly, 7-2-year-old Clara risked everything to drag a frozen, dying wolf into her living room. But as the ice melted and the creature opened its eyes, Clara realized she hadn't rescued a wolf at all. She had brought something far more dangerous into her home. The thermometer on the porch of the wooden cabin read -62 degrees Celsius, -79.6 degrees Fahrenheit. In Oymyakon, a remote village in Yakutia, Russia, this wasn't a disaster. It was a Tuesday. Clara, a 7-2-year-old widow who had lived in the pole of cold for her entire life, adjusted her fur shapka and wrapped her thick woolen scarf tighter around her face until only her eyes were visible. The air here didn't just bite, it chewed. Every inhale was a calculated risk, a sharp intake of needles that threatened to freeze the lungs from the inside out. Most people her age had moved to Yakutsk or further south to Irkutsk to be with family, but Clara was stubborn. This cabin, with its triple-paned windows and the massive wood stove that dominated the kitchen, was all she had left of her husband, Arthur. She stepped off the porch, the snow crunching under her Valenki, felt boots, with the sound of snapping styrofoam. She needed firewood. The delivery from the logging truck had been dumped near the perimeter of her fence 2 days ago, and if she didn't stack it soon, the coming blizzard would bury it until May. She was halfway to the woodpile, dragging a plastic sled behind her, when she saw it. At first, she thought it was a trick of the whispering stars, the local name for the soft, tinkling sound made by your own breath freezing in midair and falling as ice dust. But the shape was too solid, too dark against the blinding white expanse of the tundra. It lay just outside her broken perimeter fence, near the edge of the forest where the larch trees grew twisted and stunted. Clara squinted. It looked like a dog, a very large dog. Against her better judgment, she abandoned the sled and trudged through the knee-deep drifts toward the shape. As she got closer, the silhouette sharpened. The gray fur was matted with ice, the ears were flattened against the skull, and the tail was curled tight between the legs. It wasn't a dog. It was a wolf. In Yakutia, wolves were not fairy tale villains. They were a very real, very lethal plague. They killed reindeer livestock and, in desperate winters like this one, they snatched guard dogs right off their chains. Clara reached for the heavy shovel she used for snow clearing, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She should turn around. She should go inside, lock the door, and call the village administrator, Alex. But then, she saw the eye. The animal was curled into a tight ball, essentially a statue of ice. But one eye was cracked open a fraction. It wasn't the feral, yellow glare of a killer. It was dull, glazed over, and filled with a profound, quiet resignation. It was dying. Actually, by the laws of physics in Oymyakon, it should have already been dead. Clara stood over the predator, the shovel raised. The wolf didn't flinch. It didn't growl. It just watched her with that singular, freezing eye. "You stupid beast," Clara whispered into her scarf, her voice muffled. "You came here to die?" She looked at the creature's flank. It was emaciated. Ribs poked through the frost-hardened fur. There was no visible blood, but the animal was rigid. Hypothermia had set in deep. If she walked away, the heart would stop within 10 minutes. Clara lowered the shovel. She thought of Arthur. She thought of the silence in the cabin that sometimes got so loud it woke her up at night. "I am going to regret this," she grunted. She grabbed the animal by its hind legs. It was heavy, deadweight, solid as a rock. She ran back to the woodpile, grabbed her sled, and returned. With a strength born of a lifetime of hard labor, the 7-2-year-old woman rolled the frozen predator onto the plastic sled. The drag back to the house was a nightmare. The wind had picked up, cutting through her layers. The wolf's stiff legs kept catching in the snowdrifts, threatening to tip the sled over. Twice, Clara fell to her knees, gasping for air, her chest burning. "Don't you die on me now," she hissed at the wolf. "I'm not dragging you for nothing." By the time she reached the porch, her hands were trembling so badly she could barely work the latch. She kicked the door open and dragged the sled over the threshold, collapsing onto the rug in the entryway. The warmth of the cabin hit them like a physical blow. The smell of burning birchwood and dried herbs filled the air. Clara lay on the floor for a moment, staring at the ceiling, waiting for her heart rate to slow. Beside her, the wolf was a smoking block of ice, the frost on its fur instantly beginning to vaporize in the 25 degrees Celsius heat of the room. She sat up and looked at her guest. Now that it was under the light of the kitchen chandelier, she noticed something strange. The wolf was huge, much larger than the timber wolves she usually saw skirting the tree line. Its paws were the size of dinner plates, but it was the neck that caught her attention. Buried deep in the thick ruff of fur, barely visible under the ice, was a glint of metal. Clara leaned in, peeling back the frozen hair. It was a collar. A thick, industrial-grade steel collar with a small black box attached to it. There was no name tag, no phone number, just a serial number laser-etched into the metal, G779. A chill that had nothing to do with the weather ran down Clara's spine. Wild wolves didn't wear collars, and village dogs didn't wear tracking devices that looked like military equipment. The wolf let out a low, rattling wheeze. It was breathing, but barely. Clara scrambled to her feet. She grabbed old towels and blankets from the hallway closet. She knew the protocol for hypothermia: slow warming. If she warmed him too fast, the shock would kill him. She draped the blankets over the shivering beast, avoiding the head. She stoked the fire, bringing the room temperature up gently. Then, she went to the kitchen and filled a dropper with warm sugar water. She knelt by the wolf's head. "Okay, G779, she murmured. "Let's see who you really are." She touched the wolf's snout to pry its jaws open. The moment her skin touched the animal's nose, the wolf's eye snapped wide open. It wasn't glazed anymore. It was sharp, intelligent, and terrified. The wolf tried to snap, a reflex of pure instinct, but its jaw muscles were too frozen to generate any force. Clara jerked her hand back just in case, her heart skipping a beat. "Easy," she said, her voice firm. She had raised 3 generations of hunting dogs. She knew fear when she saw it. "I'm not going to hurt you." The animal stared at her, tracking her movement. The intelligence in those eyes was unsettling. Usually, a wild animal trapped in a human house would be thrashing, panicking, or catatonic. This wolf was assessing her. It seemed to understand that it couldn't move, so it was waiting. For the next 3 hours, Clara worked tirelessly. She massaged the animal's limbs through the blankets to promote circulation. She dripped warm water onto its tongue, drop by drop, until the wolf began to swallow on its own. As the ice melted, the smell hit her. It wasn't just the wet dog smell. It was something chemical, antiseptic, like the smell of a hospital corridor mixed with copper. She examined the collar again. The black box on the steel band blinked with a faint red light. Blink. Pause. Blink. "What are you?" she whispered. A heavy pounding on her front door made her jump. The wolf's ears twitched, swiveling toward the noise. "Clara, open up. I saw the tracks." It was Alex, her neighbor. He lived 2 miles down the road but checked on her twice a week. He was a good man, but nosy. And he carried a double-barreled shotgun everywhere he went, just in case. Clara panicked. If Alex saw a wolf in her living room, he wouldn't ask questions. He would shoot it on the rug and then lecture her about safety while dragging the carcass out. "Just a minute, Alex," she yelled, her voice cracking. She looked around frantically. She couldn't hide a 100-pound predator. She grabbed a thick quilt and threw it completely over the wolf, hiding the head and the distinctive gray fur. "Stay quiet," she commanded. She unlocked the door. Alex bustled in, a gust of freezing fog following him. He was a giant of a man, wearing a reindeer hide coat and carrying his rifle slung over his shoulder. "Clara, are you crazy?" he bellowed, stomping the snow off his boots. "I saw drag marks coming from the forest. It looked like you were hauling a body." And there were wolf tracks near the fence, fresh ones. He scanned the room, his eyes narrowing as they landed on the pile of blankets near the stove. I found a log," Clara lied, standing between Alex and the wolf. "A big piece of birch. I dragged it in to dry out. Alex frowned. He walked past her, towards the fire. A log? Wrapped in your good quilts? It was wet, Clara said quickly. I didn't want it dripping on the floor. Alex stopped. He sniffed the air. He looked down at the quilt. A low, guttural growl vibrated from beneath the blanket. It was a sound so deep it could be felt in the soles of their feet. Alex spun around, unslinging his rifle in one fluid motion. That's no log, Clara. Get back. No, don't shoot. Clara threw herself in front of the gun. Alex, stop. He's sick. He's dying. It's a wolf, Clara. Move. Alex's face was pale. It will tear your throat out the second it warms up. He's wearing a collar, she screamed. The words hung in the air. Alex lowered the gun slightly, confusion warring with adrenaline. What? He has a collar. A metal one, with a blinking light. He's someone's pet. Or something. Alex hesitated. In these parts, people didn't collar wolves. Show me. Clara knelt and carefully pulled back the corner of the quilt. The wolf had managed to lift its head. It wasn't growling anymore. It was looking at Alex. Alex leaned in, the barrel of his gun still pointed at the animal's chest. He saw the steel band. He saw the serial number G779. His eyes went wide. He backed away slowly, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. Clara, he whispered, his voice trembling. That is not a pet. What is it? Is it military? Alex shook his head, looking at the door as if he wanted to run. Do you remember the stories from the closed city? The lab they shut down near the Indijirka River 10 years ago? The locals talked about the Project Genome. Clara nodded slowly. It was a local legend, a Soviet-era biological facility that was supposed to have been abandoned, but people claimed they still saw unmarked helicopters landing there in the winter. My cousin, he worked security there before he disappeared, Alex said, his voice barely audible. He told me about the dogs. They weren't just dogs. They were trying to make them smarter, stronger, for search and rescue in the Arctic, they said. But they made them aggressive. He looked at the wolf. That serial number. G stands for genome. So, it's a dog? Clara asked, looking at the creature with new eyes. No, Alex said grimly. They didn't use dogs. Dogs were too fragile for the cold. They used timber wolves and spliced them. Clara, you have to get that thing out of here. Now, before the signal on that collar brings them here. Tack, as if on cue, the red light on the collar stopped blinking. It turned a solid, steady green. A high-pitched beep emitted from the black box. The wolf suddenly thrashed, its legs finding traction on the rug. It tried to stand, its claws tearing into the fabric. It's active, Alex yelled, raising the gun again. Clara, get behind me. But the wolf didn't attack. It scrambled to its feet, swaying drunkenly. It looked at Clara, then at the window. It let out a sharp bark, not a howl, but a distinct, commanding bark. Then, the landline phone in the kitchen began to ring. Clara and Alex froze. No one called the landline. The lines were usually down in this weather. The wolf turned its head toward the ringing phone. Its ears pricked. Clara walked to the phone as if in a trance. She picked up the receiver. Hello? A voice on the other end, cold and synthetic, spoke in perfect, accentless English, which was jarring in the heart of Siberia. Mrs. Clara Belova. Do not hang up. Do not let the asset leave the house. We are 6 minutes away. If the asset escapes, we cannot guarantee your safety. Clara dropped the phone. She looked at Alex, then at the wolf. The creature had stopped swaying. It was standing tall now, its massive shoulder muscles twitching. It looked at the door, then back at Clara. It walked over to her, ignoring Alex and the gun completely. It nudged her hand with its wet nose and then looked pointedly at the back door, the one that led to the root cellar and the old escape tunnel her husband had built during the Cold War scares. The wolf knew. They're coming, Clara whispered, Alex racked the slide of his shotgun. Who? I don't know, Clara said, grabbing her coat. But the wolf does. And I think he wants us to run. The sound of heavy rotors thumping against the thick air became audible in the distance, getting louder by the second. The sound of the helicopter was deafening, a rhythmic thwup 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 that shook the icicles off the cabin's eaves. Outside the frosted windows, beams of high-intensity searchlights sliced through the darkness, illuminating the swirling snow like pillars of white fire. Move, Alex shouted, grabbing a lantern. Clara didn't need telling twice. She grabbed the heavy iron ring of the trapdoor in the pantry floor and heaved. The hinges, greased with goose fat just last month, opened silently. A rush of stale, earthy air rose to meet them. The Wolf, G779, didn't hesitate. It slid into the hole with a fluid grace that defied its earlier stiffness. It paused at the bottom of the ladder, looking up, its green eyes glowing in the lantern light, urging them to follow. They are landing in the front yard, Alex hissed, listening to the crunch of heavy landing skids hitting the permafrost. Clara! Go! She descended the ladder. Alex followed, struggling with his bulk and the shotgun, pulling the trapdoor shut above them just as the sound of glass shattering echoed from the living room. They were inside. The tunnel was narrow, reinforced with old timber beams that Arthur, Clara's late husband, had installed during the height of the Soviet fears in the 1980s. It ran for 300 meters, dumping out into a dense ravine of pine trees behind the property line. It was freezing down here, but the adrenaline coursing through Clara's veins made her feel like she was burning up. Keep moving, Alex whispered, the beam of his flashlight dancing on the wolf's gray fur ahead of them. Above them, muffled thuds vibrated through the dirt. Boots. Heavy, military boots stomping through Clara's kitchen. The wolf suddenly stopped. It turned its head, rotating its ears like radar dishes. Then, it did something that made Clara's blood run cold. The wolf stood on its hind legs, pressed its front paws against a wooden support beam, and tapped a specific rhythm with a single claw. Tap, tap, tap. It's checking for vibration sensors. Alex breathed, his eyes wide. My cousin said the genome trackers use seismic sensors. This animal, it knows how to confuse them. The wolf dropped to all fours and snarled silently, jerking its head toward the end of the tunnel. It was hurting them. They reached the end of the tunnel 10 minutes later. The exit was a heavy steel hatch, rusted shut. Alex handed the lantern to Clara and slammed his shoulder against the metal. It groaned, but didn't budge. Ice had sealed it from the outside. It's stuck, Alex grunted, panic rising in his voice. From back down the tunnel the way they had come, a shout echoed. Clear left, heat signatures underground. They're in the vents. They found the trapdoor, Clara whispered. Suddenly, the wolf shoved Alex aside. The animal backed up, lowered its head, and launched itself at the steel hatch. It didn't ram it with its shoulder. It struck the latch mechanism with a precise, violent snap of its jaws, crunching the rusted metal handle as if it were a twig. Then, it threw its entire weight against the door. With a screech of tearing metal and shattering ice, the hatch flew open. The blizzard howled in, a vortex of white. They scrambled out into the ravine. The snow waist-deep. They were out. But they weren't safe. The helicopter sat on Clara's front lawn, its rotors still spinning. 6 figures clad in white Arctic camouflage and tactical vests were fanning out around the house. They held rifles with laser sights that cut red lines through the falling snow. We need to get to the tree line, Alex yelled over the wind. They waded through the snow, the cold instantly attacking any exposed skin. They made it to the first cluster of trees when a voice amplified by a loudspeaker boomed across the tundra. Clara Belova, Alex Volkov. Surrender the asset. We are authorized to use lethal force. This is a matter of national security. National security? Clara spat, wiping ice from her eyelashes. They're mercenaries. Suddenly, a red laser dot appeared on Alex's chest. Down, Clara screamed. Crack. The sound of the rifle shot was swallowed by the wind, but the impact wasn't. Alex spun around, clutching his shoulder, and fell into the snow. "Alex!" Clara scrambled to him. Blood, dark and steaming, was already soaking through his reindeer coat. The wolf stopped. It looked at Alex, then at the approaching soldiers, who were now moving fast on snowshoes. The animal looked at Clara. The intelligence in its eyes was now replaced by a terrifying resolve. It wasn't fear. It was calculation. The wolf walked up to Clara and nudged her hand with its nose one last time. Then, it turned toward the soldiers. "No!" Clara cried, reaching for its collar. "Don't!" The wolf threw its head back. It didn't howl. It let out a sound that was a mixture of a roar and a mechanical screech, a sound so loud and unnatural that the soldiers froze in their tracks. The light on the collar turned from green to a pulsing, rapid-fire red. The wolf charged. It didn't run away from the guns. It ran directly into the line of fire, moving as a gray blur, drawing every laser sight toward itself. "Target acquired! It's charging! Fire!" the squad leader screamed. Bullets kicked up geysers of snow around the wolf, but the animal was fast, unnaturally fast. It zigzagged through the drifts, using the trees for cover, closing the distance between the ravine and the open yard in seconds. Clara dragged Alex behind a thick fallen log. "Stay with me, Alex. Stay awake. The wolf." Alex gasped, his face pale. "He's buying us time." Down in the clearing, chaos erupted. The wolf leaped, clearing a 6-foot gap, and tackled the lead mercenary. The man went down screaming, his rifle firing wildly into the sky. The wolf didn't stay to maul him. It was a tactical strike. It snapped the radio antenna off the man's vest and bounded away, vanishing into the whiteout before the others could adjust their aim. The squad was in disarray. "It's flanking us!" "Watch your six!" Clara realized the wolf wasn't just attacking, it was hunting. It was using the blizzard, the dark, and their own fear against them. It was separating them, drawing them away from the ravine where Clara and Alex lay hidden. Suddenly, a deafening explosion rocked the ground. One of the mercenaries had thrown a stun grenade. The flash blinded Clara for a second. When her vision cleared, she saw the wolf lying in the snow, 20 yards away. It wasn't moving. Asset neutralized. A static-filled voice crackled over the radio of the soldier closest to them. "Secure the body. Leave no witnesses." 2 soldiers turned back toward the ravine, raising their rifles toward Clara's hiding spot. Clara closed her eyes. She reached for Alex's cold hand. She thought of the warm fire in her cabin. She thought of Arthur. Whump. A dull, heavy sound, like a hammer hitting a melon. Clara opened her eyes. The soldier on the left simply collapsed. Whump. The second soldier's head snapped back, and he fell face first into the snow. Standing behind them, emerging from the tree line like ghosts, were 4 men on skis. They wore traditional Yakut hunting furs, but they carried modern sniper rifles. "Clear," a voice shouted. It was Sergei, the village elder and head of the local hunting guild. Behind him were 3 other men from Oymyakon. "Alex!" Sergei shouted, skiing over to the log. "We heard the shots. We saw the helicopter lights from the road." The mercenaries, realizing they were now outflanked by locals who knew the terrain better than anyone on Earth, didn't fight. They scrambled back to the helicopter, dragging their injured leader. The pilot panicked. The rotors spun up to a scream, and the machine lifted off, disappearing into the storm, leaving the dead silence of the tundra behind. Clara didn't wait for Sergei. She scrambled out of the snow and ran toward the wolf. The great gray beast was lying on its side. The snow around it was stained crimson. "No, no, no," Clara sobbed, falling to her knees. She pulled off her gloves, not caring about the frostbite, and pressed her hands to the animal's side. The metal collar was cracked. The light was dead. The wolf's eye opened. It was dim, the fire fading. It looked at Clara, and for a fleeting second, the tail gave a tiny, weak thump against the snow. "You saved us," she whispered, stroking the matted fur. "You good boy. You good, brave boy." Sergei and the others gathered around, silent. hats in hands. They knew a warrior when they saw one. The wolf let out a long, shuddering breath. The steam rose into the night air, joining the stars. And then, G779 was gone. 2 days later, officials from Moscow arrived. Not the mercenaries, but real government investigators. They questioned Clara and Alex, who was recovering in the regional hospital, for hours. They confiscated the collar. They took the wolf's body away in a sealed bag, refusing to let Clara bury him. They told her it was a foreign biological hazard and that she was never to speak of it. They claimed the helicopter was a smuggling run gone wrong, but they made a mistake. Before the investigators arrived, while Sergei was helping move the wolf's body into the shed, something had fallen out of the cracked casing of the collar. It was a small, titanium drive, no bigger than a fingernail. Clara didn't give it to the men in suits. She gave it to her grandson, a computer engineer in Yakutsk. What they found on that drive shocked the world. It wasn't just data about Project Genome. It was footage. The wolf's eyes had been cameras. The drive contained hours of video showing the illegal facility, the cruel experiments, and the faces of the men running the operation, high-ranking officials from a private biotech firm called Helix Corp, operating illegally on Russian soil. But the most shocking file was a video log dated 3 years prior. It showed a man in a lab coat feeding the wolf, then a puppy from his hand. The man was speaking softly to the camera. "They want to turn you into a weapon, little one. But I made you to be a guardian. If you ever get out, find Clara. Find my Clara." The man in the video was Arthur Belova, Clara's husband. He hadn't died of a heart attack in the city, as the official report said. He had been forced to work for Helix, and he had spent his final days programming the ultimate protector to find his wife. Clara released the footage to the internet. The scandal brought down Helix Corp. The facility was razed to the ground. Clara still lives in the cabin in Oymyakon. She rebuilt her fence. But now, every evening, she leaves the gate slightly ajar. Locals say that sometimes, on the coldest nights, they see a shape patrolling the perimeter of Clara's house. A massive shadow, swift and silent, watching over the woman who saved him. They say the spirit of the wolf never left. And Clara? She just smiles, pours 2 cups of tea, and sits by the window, knowing she is never truly alone. Clara didn't just save a wolf. She uncovered a conspiracy and reunited with the memory of her husband in the most impossible way. It proves that love and loyalty can survive even the coldest winters on Earth. If you believe dogs and wolves are the ultimate protectors, hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more incredible true stories from the edge of the world.